Hello everyone, and today I'd like to talk about a very interesting topic. We talked a lot about exercise and its benefits on the brain. And today I'd like to talk about exercise and the aging brain and how exercise can slow down the process. So let's begin. And the author of the book Spark, which I'm reading now, talks about how his mom was a fast walker and she lived well into her 80s. She was physically active, and that helped her stay mentally sharp as she was walking to church, shoveling snow, planting tomatoes, and was active. She was active throughout the day. But when she broke her hip, her mind followed suit, showing this interrelationship between the physical body and the brain and the mind. And unfortunately, a lack of exercise does indeed have a toll on how mentally sharp you are. So cardiovascular and metabolic issues actually lead to physical, obviously, but also mental decline. For example, having diabetes, which is a metabolic syndrome, increases your risk for dementia, which is a cognitive condition, by 65%. And high cholesterol, which is a cardiovascular risk factor, increases this risk for dementia 43%. So those with heart disease also are more likely to suffer dementia. And those that are obese, which is again a metabolic problem, have twice the risk of developing dementia. So both metabolic and cardiovascular conditions both make dementia more likely. For example, being overweight or being obese increases the risk for dementia twofold. And factors that help guard against diabetes also help the brain, because high glucose actually causes metabolic stress in the brain, and that causes inflammation and can increase the risk through dementia by causing amyloid plaques and neurological tangles in the brain, which is what causes Alzheimer's, which is the most common type of dementia. So if you protect yourself against diabetes, and if you exercise and protect yourself against diabetes, because exercise regulates your blood glucose and insulin levels, that also protects your brain, preventing neurological inflammation, which is a risk factor, which was what causes Alzheimer's. So preventing diabetes will of course also help you prevent Alzheimer's. And as I mentioned, having diabetes increases your risk for dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or other types of dementia, by 65%. And Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia, where you literally get a loss of brain volume. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Running, which helps with reducing blood pressure and has a ton of cardiovascular benefits, also helps keep your capillaries in the brain from collapsing and actually helps you prevent a stroke. So you can see how something that's good for your heart is also good for your brain. Now, exercise helps against cognitive decline, which makes sense. And a study by the Journal of American Medical Association showed that women who were walking a longer distance, so they compared two groups, but the more walking group, essentially the women who are walking more, had 20% less cognitive impairment. So it helps the cognitive decline of aging. So the more you walk, the better you are to stay fit mentally, to have to do better from a cognitive standpoint. Now, as we age, our tolerance for stress goes down, and we make less BDNF. And remember, BDNF was important for learning and memory. Also, VEGF goes down, which, as you'll see later, helps make new blood cells or endothelial cells, which helps make more blood vessels for the brain. So by reducing VEGF, you reduce your vasculature supply to the brain. As we age, we also make less dopamine, which is important in many things, motivation being one of those things, as well as you have less neurogenesis and stem cell division. Remember, exercise helps with making new brain cells in the hippocampus, for example. Well, as you age, you have less brain cell production, and you literally lose brain volume as a result. And this increases your risk for Alzheimer's, especially if this brain loss is in the frontal cortex, temporal cortex, or hippocampus, because that's usually where people with Alzheimer's lose their brain matter. Now, exercise helps maintain this blood flow to the brain via VEGF and the fibroblast growth factor. Both of these help make endothelial cells, which is what exercise helps with, and so you get more vascular supply to the brain, as well as you restore neural communication. You know that exercise helps make new synapses, and this is really great because you're making these networks in the brain, these connections, as well as neurogenesis, where you're literally making new brain cells, and so you slow the decline of cognitive decline. You actually slow the decline of this stress threshold, because as you age, your stress threshold goes down because the stress, oxidative, metabolic, and excitability, all those three stress factors that I talked in several videos ago, all can cause apoptosis and the loss of neurons. And as you age, this threshold goes down, but exercise helps raise the threshold, so you get less cell death, you get less neuronal death, you get less apoptosis, and so your brain is more resilient to cellular stress, whether it's oxidative, whether it's metabolic, or whether there's overexcitability due to high production of glutamate. As we saw, exercise helps put the brakes by increasing GABA, and so you get less cellular death as a result of cellular stress. Also, when you exercise, VO2 max increases, in fact 17% in elderly women, as was shown by one study. So you literally get more blood to your brain, right? Which makes sense because you make more VEGF and the fibroblast growth factor, FGF. And Kramer actually showed you literally get structural changes as well, which makes sense because of neurogenesis. Literally get more brain matter in the frontal and temporal lobes, suggesting that exercise not only prevents cognitive decline and prevents this brain this brain rotting which takes place as we age, but also reverses cellular deterioration. And this is an important concept. So on top of BDNF, which increases your synaptic connections, you also get physical neuronal growth. You literally get more neurons in the brain, and you get more brain volume in these areas which suffer as a result of Alzheimer's. And your brain literally looks 2 to 3 years younger, and you actually can recruit different areas to perform mental tasks that would be performed by the areas that are lost during aging, so you get compensation. So let's say a certain mental task requires your prefrontal cortex, and you don't have that area because you lost it as a result of aging. Well, exercise helps recruit other areas that can help you with that mental functions or to perform this mental task. So exercise is so important. It helps the aging brain. It helps make synaptic connections in the brain, increases BDNF, helps with cognition, learning, memory, executive functions. It helps recruit other areas of the brain that would otherwise be not functional as a result of aging, and it can lead to neurogenesis and create new nerve cells in the brain.